Thanks, Jordan. I think she just actually finished our panel. So she said crypto is going to die. So should we all just say yes and go backstage? OK, so ICOs have become the new boom in tech. Over $1.7 billion have been raised from companies using ICOs. And yet people in tech don't really understand the model well. So we're here with 3 experts, each of which have intimate understanding and experience of running ICOs. Eyal is from Bancor, a company which raised $150 million of tokens in June. Jun, in the middle, is from OmiseGO, which raised $20 million in an ICO. And on the end is Dan Morehead from Pantera Capital. He runs a $100 million ICO fund. OK, guys, so what is an ICO? Who wants to answer first? What's the basics of an ICO? Dan, perhaps you can start.
Well, these gentlemen created 2, so I think they'd be the experts. But I think an ICO is a way for the developers and the early community members to share in the network success. And so I think it is actually quite different than a company or equity. It's a new business model.
So it's not an IPO.
There's some similarities, but there's some very, very important differences down the road as to who shares in the success. The current model, the people who built the protocols that run so much in our lives really got none of the value, and you ended up with some data monopolists on top of each of these silos. With ICOs, you're going to have all of the developers and all the early community members sharing in the success. OK. John, for you, what was an ICO? Why did you do an ICO?
The ICO is I think the best example is the Ethereum itself. Using the Ethereum, they require the ETH, and the token has to widely spread to the market to secure the network. And also, in the same way, the OmiseGO network in proof of stake, decentralized network, and the fully public and the permissionless, and require using OMG to validate the transaction. So the ICO is one way to distributing the token widely. OK, so
let's just go back a bit. So your ICO was to create a payment network, right?
You can exchange any internet value through our decentralized network. So it's not just only the payment.
OK, so you can exchange anything through the network.
Yes,
okay.
Any internet value.
Yeah, so your service is interesting. So I was thinking of how I could explain it to the audience in a very short, sort of series of words. And it's kind of tough, right? So basically, your product helps other people's ICO tokens stay liquid in the market.
Yes.
But how do you explain that in an elevator pitch to somebody?
Basically, what I say is that today, those tokens that can be issued, which is the real innovation here, that anyone can issue a currency and even get funds for that currency for the first time, a decentralized currency, a secure, safe. And I think that with that phenomena, there is a problem of liquidity, because today liquidity is provided in exchange and market makers and for market takers. And basically what we do, use the ability for those tokens to hold assets, to hold other tokens. So you have money that uses money. So the token itself takes care of its own liquidity. Okay. And this is something that could not have been done with just plain money. Only when you have programmable money that can actually hold assets.
So basically you help, so if I do an ICO, you'd help my token stay relevant.
Stay liquid, so people can buy it or sell it, regardless if it's traded on exchanges or not.
Okay. And so John, your ICO has been pretty interesting, right? So can you talk about the price change that you've seen since you issued the first coin?
Mm-hmm. You mean
what was the price of the coin when it was first issued, and what's the price now?
It's around it's 20 cents, and it's now It's around 12 US dollar.
Oh, wow. So that's a huge increase.
Yeah.
So that means that a lot of people who bought the token the first time have made a lot of money, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But so I mean, obviously that I think a lot of people are obsessed by the angle of being able to raise like $150 million or $20 million, right? But what does it actually mean beyond that? I mean, there's a lot more to an ICO than just all the money, right? What's your take on this? Like,
I think a lot of people kind of confuse ICO with fundraising because it both has to do with funding new ventures. However, they're very different. I mean, if you want to compare an ICO to something that we know about, so it's just like someone going to a country and buying the currency of that country in a hope that the economy will grow and the currency will appreciate. So it's not like owning share in the company. It's like owning a token in a specific economy. I like to call those ICOs online economies. And again, this is a model that we never had before, and we never could have done it.
Okay. And Dan, as an investor, so you've been in the crypto space for over 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And you've been investing in ICOs for 1 year, right? So what's the difference between buying a token in an ICO sale and buying equity as ordinary VCs do?
Well, I guess a distinction would be there have been ICOs for a long time. They used to just be called crowd sales. So, Ethereum had an ICO. So we invest both in venture and in ICOs and tokens, and they're very different things. A lot of the ICOs that are being talked about now might not need a token, and so ultimately, won't be successful. So we're looking for the projects where the token is actually absolutely necessary for the functioning of the network.
Right, so the token is part of a business, not just for raising money, right? It
Yes.
has to integrate into the business. But what about you as a token holder? So when you own equity in a company, often you can help companies open doors, you can help them raise more money in further rounds with the relationships that you have. How does owning a token, how do you work with the companies that have actually released the token? Is it the same model?
It's similar. I mean, we help them with how to build on Ethereum, or we introduce them to other entities that would be helpful in their project, or help them recruit. So there are similar functions, not as active, but we can still help out.
And John, what's the relationship that you have between the business, Omise, and the token holders that are out there?
So how we started is the OmiseGO is because we need a pain point of the payment, because the Omise, since back 2013, in 2015 we started fully operating our payment processing businesses in Southeast Asia, and we knew the toughness of the dealing with a financial institution. Then we came up with the idea of utilizing the Ethereum network. What is the question again?
Well, what's the relationship with a token holder? So,
so end of the day, we have a different layer. Omise payment is providing acceptance, and Omise is going to be the network. So we try to create in our own ecosystem, which it's OmiseGO network, the token holder, the join transaction validation in our whole transactions.
So you could, you could have gone out there and raised, $20 million plus, right, from investors. So why did you pick this route? I mean, apart from so basically the token is part of the business that you're.
Yes. So ICO itself is for us. It's not just a fundraising. It's for us the validating transactions. And secure the network, we need to distribute in our token to as many as possible. So, and which the token has a value. So that's why we got the money too. But we totally capped and it tried to not raise the money which we don't need.
So how much money do you think that you could have raised if you wanted to be greedy and snatch?
Actually, we can easily raising 10 times.
So 200 million.
It's over.
But you didn't want to do that. Why
Why
wouldn't you want to do that? That's a lot of money, right?
Because basically we're pulling out the value from the Ethereum network, and what we get is what we have to give back more. So the community has to be healthy. So and also the community, the value, reflecting to our value too. So that's why we don't want raising as money, which we don't really need.
Okay, so you basically raised as much money as you needed for the business.
Yes.
Okay.
I think
Bancor was the same. How did you guys do?
So, since we did our round, I've been thinking about this point a lot, and I think that one thing that is very important to understand is that, for example, in Ethereum, as a great example, it's not a company, it's an ecosystem. Ethereum itself is a non-profit foundation, and the difference between the two is huge, because essentially you can say that an ecosystem is a collection of many for-profit companies that work together and collaborate by using the same currency. So you can think even about Bitcoin as many different for-profit companies, but they're all part of the same ecosystem. They're all building essentially the same service and using the same database. So it's a structure that we never saw before. The only thing that you could raise money for was a for-profit company. Who would have thought about making, Bancor itself is a $150 million round that was for a non-profit entity, because we're building an ecosystem. And I think that you can see in examples in one of the recent raises, like Tezos and EOS, which did like huge hundreds of millions of dollars fundraising, and they're already setting their own VC funds in order to invest in companies that are going to build product and solution in the ecosystem that they're creating. So we're talking about a very different model, a very scalable model, because you can grow in parallel. And I don't think that the same rules that applied to previous fundraising practices applies here, because it is a different kind of beast.
It is, right? And so Dan, does it mean that existing venture capital is going to die, or is there some kind of way you can work both of them together?
I think it's a great question.
It's a big one, right? Everyone wants to know the answer.
No, venture capitalists are always blah, blah, blah about disruption, and ICOs are disrupting them. And it's totally democratizing access to financial investment. If you think about the old model, you had to be a pretty sophisticated, wealthy investor to invest in a venture fund, and then they would select which entrepreneurs to back. And now the entrepreneurs, like on stage, are going straight to the ultimate investor. And it's totally democratized, because basically you just need a smartphone. So there's 3 billion people on Earth that can be an Ethereum investor or a token investor.
But do you not think that, I've watched a lot of ICOs coming through, and it seems like there's investors, and your firm is one of them, right? And you guys have the advantage of having 100 million, right, to put into ICOs. And so actually, what's happened in ICOs is, right at the start, it was a level playing field where anybody could put in. Now it seems like now most token sales have a really solid portion that just goes to investors like you, right? And then it opens up to everybody else afterwards. So is it a case that investors just have to change their focus and realize that this is a new kind of funding that they can actually get into, as well as their current?
Well, I think the kind of the benefit will be, in the long run, investors can invest directly in projects like Bancor or Omise. But there's a Cambrian explosion happening right now. There were 65 ICOs a week ago in 1 week. And so there is an argument that a fund like ours can do some diligence and actually read all the white papers and take a look at the tech behind the things and add some value. But in 20 years, that's probably not true. It'll be very transparent, and a fund like ours really won't have a reason to exist.
Right. So, how on earth, do you go through like? You said there was 60.
There were 65 ICOs in 1 week.
And what size team are you? How many people?
So we have about 12 people, and 5 of us are just reading white papers all day and meeting developers.
So that seems like it's very, very tough to do, right?
There is. It's just so much happening right now.
And in terms of like signals, so as you mentioned at this point, when you're looking into an ICO, there's no finished product yet. So the money is being raised to build a product that's going to come soon. So you read the white paper, which is a vision of what they want to build. So as an investor, how do you view it, and how do you think, like, this is possible, this is good, this is too much? Like, what are the signals that you're kind of seeking?
Well, everyone always uses the internet, .com analog, and I think it's a good one. But in this case, back then you actually had the sock puppet, and you could tell if the sock puppet was going to figure out how to do, pet food delivery online. Here, it's just a white paper and a few developers. I mean, it's so far before what the IPO boom was in the 90s. So it really does take a lot of in-depth thinking and reading, and because back then, remember, they talked about valuations based on eyeballs. I mean, there isn't a community yet. The first project to go live, I think, would be Augur, and that's not yet live in a couple of months. So that'll be the first one that is actually working at scale. All the rest are just, kind of evaluating the likelihood of success.
So you look for, like, the team strength, like the previous history of work that they've done?
Sure, whether the business case makes sense, whether the team is, likely to be able to execute it. And then the ultimate one, which I think is going to weed out a lot of projects, is the token necessary? Because I think there are a lot of projects where they're saying, hey, it's kind of hard to raise money in the venture world. Why don't I just do an ICO? And maybe the token isn't ultimately necessary, and somebody will just fork it and replace it with a cheaper product.
Yeah, and also I'm just curious. So as a VC in the space, so you buy tokens, and I think as John mentioned, the token that his company put out there has gone up like a lot, right? So at what point, when you're holding a token, do you actually sell that token? Do you flip it after like 2 weeks, like everybody else does, to get their quick money back? Do you hold it? Like, what's the benefit of holding a token?
If you believe in the project, the benefit is it will continue to appreciate. And we did invest in OmiseGO through our offshore subsidiary, and we still hold it. It's a very interesting project, and we hold almost every token that we've bought. We've held till present, and we might hold for another 5-10 years.
So basically, it's a bit too early to say, right, when to sell.
But yeah, I think we're just in the beginning of a multi-decade process. So.
And from a company perspective, how do you guys work with investors? Did you go out there and like actively, pursue investors?
So I think in most projects that I see, including our own, you would see about 50% of the investment from professional investors, and 50% would be from the general public, which is kind of the first time that it's possible. It's the first time that it's possible for anyone to be participating in an early stage investment and get some of the upside that those investments have. I think, and this is the reason we see so many, because when you have just startups in the world, so each VC has its own deal flows. But when the fundraising becoming something that anyone can join, so there's a lot of it, and everyone can can see the list and everyone can participate. So it's a bit overwhelming. But I think for your question about the implication for VCs, I think that we see today an amazing phenomenon of a lot of VCs that are actually creating funds using tokens, and they're creating VC funds that are liquid. So you can invest in VC, you can sell your investment. I'm helping guys that are traditional VCs in Israel to create an online token-based VC called Spice VC. And I think there are many examples like that we're going to see. The token-based VC, like Blockchain Capital did one, and I think it holds a lot of opportunities for investors as well as for entrepreneurs.
And John, I'm interested to know how, obviously, your token has really soared, and I think a lot of people that bought into the token sale have made a lot of money. Have you found like you've got a fan base around the world? Because you're based in Bangkok, right?
Yes.
But you have some kind of international presence. I know there's like a Reddit forum that's very active, and there's other kinds of parts of the internet that are very interested in your
It's
company?
actually for the token sale. We are using the third party, and we are fully doing the KYC, but illegally we don't have the access to the information. But what I heard from those third party was it's very the diversity. There's like diversity and also the geography. So I think one of like our track record is building the very strong community and also very good stakeholder who understand our token mechanism to see the future, the participation of our proof of stake, and which is the one of like investors, the Pantera, and also the most of people holding token for the long, I guess, and also they declare they want to holding it because they believe this the proof of stake decentralized network connected to Ethereum is changing the way people exchange the values.
So after you raise the token sale, so basically you're raising the money first, and you have the vision of the product that you sold to people like Dan who want to put money in. What happens on the first day after the token sale? Do you have a team that's already in place to go out and build this product? Do you have to hire people? What's the kind of...
We've been working for 1 year with a 10-people team on the product before the token sale. We had a fully working demo out before the token sale. And I think a lot of projects have a lot to show for before they're doing their token sale, especially the big ones. So I don't know if it's true for any project that it's just two guys with a white paper. It's actually, I know that OmiseGO did a lot before the token sale. They started working in 2013.
Yeah. It's since back 2015, we just started to contribute the Ethereum Foundation. At that moment, the Ethereum was still like the very small project, and we are the one of the three outside the company who's involving and contributing Ethereum Foundation. So we've been working. It's a very long time for this project. So it's our like the token sale. It's not like spontaneously is coming up. It's suddenly like, okay, we're raising money or something. It's very
planned.
Yeah.
Right. So you've been in the space for a long time. You'd given a grant to the Ethereum Foundation in 2015. So you've been thinking about ways you could build the blockchain into your business, right, or start other businesses.
Yes. Since back 2015, we are actually open up our blockchain lab, and basically we are invested as the lab. It's a lot of the money to doing the experiment of the blockchain itself. So even before doing the ICO, we already hired a lot of people in the team, and yeah, so we are working. We've been working for this a long time.
So I guess in both of your cases, you already had seen the vision, you've begun to build it, and then at some point you needed to go and get extra money, and that's when the ICO came in, right?
It's both the extra money, but it's not less than that. The whole idea that you can build an ecosystem which cooperate using a specific token, which gives the entire ecosystem a network effect, like the network effect of Bitcoin, like the network effect of Ethereum. Bitcoin was about a decentralized currency. Ethereum is currently about an alternative mechanism for fundraising, which is very successful on all measures. So the idea is to create those ecosystems that could not have been created without a token. So it enables new kind of models that were not possible before.
Okay, so basically ICOs is more than just capital. It's about creating companies that can be a self-sustaining ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So there's no advertising being thrown at you, there's no in-app purchases, you just use a product because it's good and the money is already there that's been raised.
Yeah, because if you try to set up an ecosystem with a for-profit company, and I think we've seen a good share of that here in the Silicon Valley, it usually creates a problem and a conflict of interest between the central for-profit entity and all the other for-profit. And in this case, it's like an equal ecosystem where all the for-profit entities compete with each other on equal basis, still working for the same goal, using the same technology, building a different module of the same product, if you will.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're almost out of time, but there's so many areas that we haven't covered. So Dan, I just want to give you the final word here. I'm really curious to know, like, how do you see this this space on a VC side over the next year or so? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, you know, there are people that say, hey, there were 65 ICOs, therefore it's a bubble. And I think people miss the point that there's probably going to be a single-digit number of blockchains or currencies in the future, but ICOs are really akin to companies or equity. You know, they're projects that are doing specific verticals or use cases. And there's 4,500 public companies in the US. There's, you know, hundreds of thousands of private companies. So there could be, you know, I think you're going to see just an enormous explosion of projects out there. And, you know, they're not all going to work. But the ones that do come out of it, like Omise or Bancor, that are successful, are going to really change the world. So I think it's, you know, it's a really interesting time to be investing.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.